We brought her all the way out from, so far away, from the ravines of Siberia, also known as Botany Downs in Auckland City. She's the lead pastor of Elim Christian Centre, and her name is Becs Green. Good morning and welcome to the show, Becs.
Morning, guys.
Good morning.
So good to be here.
How are you this morning?
I'm doing great, and I hear a happy birthday is in order.
Oh, for Life
Yeah.
FM.
He's
Thank you.
25 years.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Incredible.
Have you been listening to Life FM for that long?
Not quite for that long, but we are morning show fans.
Yeah.
My boys and I listen in the car on the way to school in the morning. They love it.
We're going to catch up with Becs about a book that she's written. She's a flash author too. Man, that's really cool about a book she's written. We'll do that in just a second. But right now, though, Becs, I want to talk about your journey as a pastor. You know how people talk about God's calling and God's purpose in people's lives. And for some people, that shifts over time, a lot of time. Like, I don't think I've stayed with one thing. So when did that start for you, the journey of knowing where you were supposed to be right now?
Yeah, so I think probably like most people, I didn't know. So when I was at school, I always knew God had called me to something to do with ministry and his church. I loved church. Like I was one of those kids that was involved in everything. I literally was on every single team in church. And then when I left high school, I actually went to get a degree as a teacher. So I started off as a teacher, primary school teacher, and spent 4 years doing that. And then after I met my husband, he got asked to be the youth pastor. And so that's kind of where the journey of pastoring started. We did youth pastoring for about 8 years. We were in youth ministry. And then God called us to pastor a campus in Whangarei. And we spent 4 years up there before moving back to Auckland to do the role that we're doing now.
You're a primary school teacher.
I was, yeah.
And you still wanted to have kids after that.
Yeah. Listen, my favourite part of the day was 3 p.m. when all the kids would go home.
And you're like, finally, they're out.
That's a tough gig.
Yeah, well, it is. So I realised at that point, this is probably not the job for me. And, moved into other things.
That's awesome. And Becs, so you were youth pastoring for 8 years. I know you've been senior pastoring or lead pastoring for a really long time as well. What's given you the sticking power or the staying power to stay at that one thing? Like Stella was saying earlier, there can be, I don't know, sometimes you want to move on to a different career or you get really difficult challenges and it can make you want to leave, but you've stuck it out for such a long time. What do you think? What has that been for you?
Well, I think, to be honest, I think it's simply been the call of God. Like, I think it's been knowing that we got a word from him that this is what he was calling us to. And every time it gets hard, because, like, man, there have been so many times I've wanted to quit.
Yeah.
Like, so many times when it's hard and, you know, the job is hard and people are mean and things happen and it just makes you feel really discouraged and you're not sure if you're the right person for the job and you just don't know if it's the right thing for you to be doing. But every single time we're just reminded of the fact that we know actually we got a word from him, we believe we're called to this and that he will sustain us through it. And that this is what he's got us doing. And that whole idea of purpose and fulfillment and doing something bigger than us, you know, that keeps you going when in the hard times, that knowing that actually there's a greater call, there's a bigger purpose, and he's called us to be part of it.
You've got the support of family and you're married.
Yes.
So that must have made, you know, those challenges a lot easier for you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Someone may be listening right now, right, and being encouraged by what you're saying, but they may be doing the journey on their own and going through seasons of challenge. So what would you say to them who go through those lows and lows and lows, and the highs aren't that many?
Yeah, I'd say, you know, that's a really difficult place to be in, especially if you feel alone in it. And I think one of the biggest things that I have learned along the way is that we're never alone with Christ. So even in a season where it feels alone, Bible talks about that he'll never leave us or forsake us. And so there are some situations and seasons that we go through and we can feel alone and it can feel really difficult. But in those seasons when we're feeling like we're not sure what to do or where to go next or who to talk to, God might not fix it. You know, sometimes we want him to click his fingers and fix the problem.
Yeah.
But he doesn't always do that. But what he does do is promise his presence with us through it always. And so, he's always there. He's always with us and with us every single step of the way.
I love that, what you're saying about the promise of his presence. And I'm assuming over the last few years for you, there's definitely been some lows, but there would have also been some highs. Do you have any high that comes to mind that you're like, this reminds me why I do what I do?
Yeah, I think there's been so many. Baptism Sundays are pretty special in our church, which we do sort of regularly, where we see people stand up in front of a whole bunch of friends and say, I was lost, but now I'm found. And my life was a mess, and now I have purpose. Or, I was sick and God healed me. I was broken and he made me whole. And then to watch them go through the waters of baptism, to get to see that every single week and be part of that journey and part of that story is pretty powerful.
I was fortunate and blessed to be a part of a baptism that I've never been to one before. A close friend of mine, his daughter. And I know that it would be such an experience and such an emotive overtaking of a spirit for that individual. But for everybody in the auditorium, everybody in that place of worship, man, it was such a special and overwhelming sense of, man, he's right here, right?
Yeah.
So it's not only the person who's getting baptized, it's everyone else who's filling the Spirit as well.
Yeah, it's a powerful moment. And we do it, in our church, we do it during worship. And so it's just that it is such an incredible moment when they come out of the water and everyone cheers, and it's awesome.
Oh, cool.
So good. Can't beat it.
Not only is she a superstar lead pastor, but she's also written a book, and the book is called 1,000 Times Enough. All right, Becs. Obvious question. What's behind the book?
What's behind the book? Well, the book is really a journey that takes a reader on the journey of insecurity and comparison, right through walking us through to a place of understanding God's grace, God's call on our lives, and understanding that, we're actually not enough without Christ. In ourselves, we're not enough, but through Him, He has called us. And He's given us a purpose, and He's placed something on our lives, and not one of us is exempt from that. And every single one of us is called, and He's graced us for every single thing that He has called us to, despite the lack of self-worth or the insecurity or the comparison that we might feel.
Did the book come out as a result of your insecurities?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to talk us a little bit through that?
Growing up, I was quite a quiet kid. I didn't really question my place in my home. I was the third child, youngest child, and was always very loved, kind of probably the classic spoilt younger kid. And so I never questioned my self-worth at home. But outside of that, I was quite quiet, and I always saw myself as being quite average. Like I've even measured myself. I'm like the average height for a woman my age. I've got the average universal shoe size. I even have the average head circumference.
I love that you've checked.
Oh yeah, I've checked. And I was just average at school. I was at middle of the road at everything. I really felt like a plain Jane. And one of the things that I always felt was that I was forgettable. And so I would just think that I wasn't very memorable. And so there came a time where I realized a habit that I had developed, that I had, when I would introduce myself to somebody or meet someone for a time, even if I was meeting them for the second, third, or even sometimes like the fourth time, to save us the embarrassment, because I would think they would have forgotten me, they won't remember me, I would always introduce myself for the first time, just to save us both being embarrassed at the forgetting your name or forgetting that I've met you before. And it was in one of those, after years of doing that, it was in one of those moments I just felt the Lord speaking to me. And it was literally as I was introducing myself to somebody for the first time, even though it was like the second or third time. And He just said to me, "Who told you you were forgettable?" Wow. And I realized in that journey that it doesn't, because at that point I'm standing up on platforms, I'm preaching. I've been preaching since I was 15 years old. I'm standing in front of everybody. I look all the confident, like I've got all the confidence. But inside, I just didn't feel like I was enough. And I realized that if that's how I am feeling, then there must be a whole lot of people out there who are afraid to step into what God has got for them because they just don't think they've got the goods.
That's so powerful. What would you say to someone who was struggling with that and a feeling of inadequacy or insecurity or even imposter syndrome in their workplace, even in their family or friend circles, kind of like how you were dealing with that? What would you say to them to help them step into their calling, or you had already stepped into their calling, or your calling. So let's say they're already in their calling. How do they combat those feelings?
Yeah, I think all of us battle with it. So I think that's one of the first things to remember, is that I think at any stage in our life, all of us will walk through a point where we go, have I got what it takes? And the answer to that for anyone walking through that journey is actually, no, you don't, but with Christ you do. So actually, my journey to realizing that I'm more than enough is realizing that I am not enough on my own, but that with Christ I have everything that I need to do what He's called me to do. And so the journey that each of us needs to go on is a laying down of self, because insecurity says it's about me. Insecurity is worried about what everyone's thinking about me, and can I do this, and is this going to be okay? And, if I get up on the platform, insecurity is saying you need to be good at what you're saying, you need to do a good job, you need to preach good, and da-da-da. Whereas living and stepping out in the grace that God's got for me is not me thinking, am I good enough? It's me thinking, God, use me. Just use me to bless other people. And so it's a journey of laying myself down and going, God, use me. Do what you have called me to do. It's a growing dependency on God. It's a trusting in Him, trusting that He's called me, trusting that if He's put me in that position, if He's called me to be a mum to my kids, if He's called me to be in that boardroom and at that board meeting, if He's called me to be in this position on the radio, if He's called me to be standing in front of a classroom of kids, whatever He's called me to do, if He's called me, then He wants me. If He wanted someone else, He would have called someone else. He would have put them in there. But because I'm here, it means He's positioned me here for a purpose, because He wants me and what I bring. And so it's about bringing that into that situation.
Amen to that.
Amen.
If you're hearing that right now for the first time, we hope that you're empowered and you're encouraged. If you're by yourself, let those words penetrate your spirit. It must have been really, really therapeutic after you finished writing the book.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was
during and after.
Yeah, but also pretty scary. Yeah, for a person with an insecurity issue to write a book and then put it out in front of people.
But you got it done.
Yeah, it certainly challenged those places in my heart.
Yeah, you're practicing what you preach, which I think is really inspiring. You still went out and you did it.
Has anyone, can you share with us maybe some comments from people who have actually picked up your book? And
people have been very loving and gracious, and I have had a lot of emails and text messages and messages over the time about people who have been able to pick this up and who have found and a lot of people who are in new roles or positions similar to mine, where they have felt totally inadequate. And I think one of the things that they have realised is that you can look at anyone who can look like they've got confidence, but maybe you don't know what they're walking through. And I think that people have found an enormous sense of relief in it, because they've gone, oh my goodness, I don't have to have it all together. I don't have to strive for perfection. I can simply rest in the calling that God has got for me. I met one lady actually just the other day, and she said she got to about page 6 and was just absolutely in tears because she just felt seen by God. She was the mum who felt like she'd failed her kids, and she just felt like someone had heard her and seen her, and just really helped her get back into her walk with God, which is really such a joy for me to hear those stories and that feedback.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
There was a reason why you're here this morning, so we appreciate you. Thank you so much, Becs, for sharing a little bit about yourself and the reason why you put this book out. One more time, it's called 1,000 Times Enough. If people want to get a hold of it, where can they get a hold of it?
They can go to www.1000timesenough.com.
You take care of yourself.
Thank you so much for having me.
Be a fantastic mum to your boys, okay?
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you
for coming.
soon. Becs Green, lead pastor of Elim Christian Centre in Botany in Auckland City.